Okay, so today with me, I have Haven Berry, who is in our cultural psychology class. Hello, Haven.
Hi, Joni.
So we're just gonna do one Zoom call and just one submission link, and we'll just do one upload to YouTube as well. I have
Okay.
a list, a couple questions ready for both of us to answer. So,
Mhm.
do you have it pulled up from your side?
Yeah.
If you want, we can just kind of ricochet as who asks which question.
Okay.
But I'll start us off with the first question. So, what is it like living in America as a Black woman in 2025?
I would say it's hard and easy. Um, the easy part is being a woman, black woman in general, especially with the new ruling on DEI. People are looking towards black women for a lot of the stuff that's going on in society. They're looking for black brands, black businesses, black everything, especially from black women, because I guess they see it's kind of as like the blueprint. So I would say in that standpoint, it's easier, but trying to find like a job has really been the hardest. Because of the DEI, which is the negative impact. Being a black woman is hard to look for jobs. It's hard to get chosen for jobs, even though you are qualified. So I say that's the hardest thing.
Gotcha. Thank you for sharing. I know that even before like the removal of DEI, it was already hard looking for
Mm.
jobs and hard finding a job. So, if you were to rank it on a percentage, how much would you say how much harder did it get after DEI was removed?
I would say about 50%. Just from applying from 2 years ago to applying for jobs this year, it was a complete difference of from jobs back then, I heard from them almost instantly because of the qualifications I've had. And since then, I've advanced my qualifications. But when I apply for jobs, I hear nothing back. Or if I click Black African American woman on my application, I can tell that they don't even really look at it because I don't hear anything back, or you don't get this position, you're not qualified enough for it. So it's like it death is a difference.
Good deal. So 50%, that's a pretty big margin, especially when it's already hard to land a job in certain areas as
Right.
well. I would say for myself, as a black man in 2025, me personally, I'm chilling. I'm not gonna
Mm,
lie. I don't really think I have it tough.
mm,
And it's not like I'm really getting handouts or anything like that. I mean, largely a lot of the stuff that I'm doing is kind of on my own, but at the same time, that's just me as a person and things that I've learned throughout internships that kind of allow me to navigate certain areas. So I personally don't find those same issues as hard. Like I didn't even know that you could put like African American male or women on
mm,
your resume and be more likely to get hired back when DEI was
mm.
involved. And now that it's not in place anymore, having that on there is like minus 10 points. I didn't know that. That to me, that was never an idea to place
Mm.
um, on my resume. But now that you shared that, I'm like, well, I had no idea that was an
Mm.
issue. I had no idea that was going on. So I do appreciate you for sharing on that piece. But um, so I've applied for other jobs, and I do, and I have gotten to the step to where they are, responding back, or they are
Mm.
reaching out. But then I get cut short at sorry, but we're not necessarily looking for people
Yeah.
with these qualities, even though you might be qualified. But then other times it's like I get to the interview. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like 50-50 toss up.
What do you think are the core difference between both men and women in this current era?
Dang. What's crazy when I type these down
Mm.
initially, I wasn't planning on answering this because I was going to go with somebody else who wasn't in the class.
Hmm.
And now that I am doing this with someone in the class, it's like, dang, no, I actually like have to respond to these myself. So that makes this a little wild because now I have to genuinely respond to a genuine question.
Right.
Honestly, I would say that since it is, the 21st century, a lot of those lines have become a little bit more blurred. Like they're still there.
Hmm.
Those like prominent, male roles and female roles are still there,
Hmm.
but it's like going from, like a permanent marker to a dry erase board. Like it can kind of blend, kind of erasable,
Hmm.
depending on who you ask. But
Hmm.
I would say one of the core differences is still more or less um, demeanor, like
Hmm.
more so in how a man carries himself, and more so how a woman carries himself. I think it's still prominent. Like a woman should still be ladylike, and a man should still come off manly, like in a to an extent, depending on the
Hmm.
circumstance. Depending on how you would read the room. So still be able to fulfill those roles depending on what is asked of you in a space. I think is still important, and that still clearly sets us apart. So like here down here in the South, taught to be gentlemen. Hold the door
Yeah.
for whoever's coming in after you, whether it's a lady or not. You know what I mean? And I'm sure it's the same way for women as well, but you are also taught like always let the man grab the door for you first. So a
Hmm.
lot of those kind of more defined gender characteristics still kind of set men and women apart, compared to back in the day, those more hard gender identifying roles, like women will more likely than not stay at the home to cook while the man, if he can provide for both, for the whole home, by himself, will go out and work, come back, and the dinner's made. Well, nowadays, both mom and dad go out, come
Hmm.
back, and they'll probably work on dinner together. Or there will be days dad cooks, mom mom cooks, or days where mom's at work, dad's at home, or on the other hand, dad's at work, mom's at home. So
Yeah.
it has been a lot of mesh, I would say.
Hmm. For me, I would say the core difference is how society treats men and women. I would
I didn't
say
even think
in
about that.
this,
Yeah,
I say in this era and time, I think society is really hard on men, just in general. You see a lot of posts where it's like, if man does this, you look at the comments and it's like, go to hell or he's trash or some real far. But if a woman does, it's like, power to her, you go girl, you do this. I think the shift from being a male-centered society and like man pride and all of that has shifted to woman pride.
yeah,
Be like the
I
core difference now.
yeah, and I do want to piggyback off of that a little bit too, like especially when you see it on social
Hmm.
media. And some of
Hmm.
like the more like the degenerate dating stuff you'll see, like 20v1,
Yeah.
10v1s.
Yeah.
Professor, if you don't know what that space is, it's degeneracy. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Yeah. I see
Sometimes it
it.
is pretty entertaining, but for the most part, it's just people making fun of other people, and it's kind of
Hmm.
unless you're into that stuff. But like even when it comes to those types of media, it's
Hmm.
like the woman dogging on the men, and
Yeah.
then like 80% of the time, and then when it's the woman's turn, like the guy, he doesn't really dog them out as hard,
Hmm.
or if they do at all. But then, like you said a second ago, it reflects in the comments. Like if a woman dogs
Hmm.
out the men, everybody in the comments is like, yeah, like men shouldn't be like this, yeah, that, this, that, third, XYZ. Flip the tables around, and then it's everybody supporting the woman. And it's just like, dang, like this is just where society is at the moment.
Yeah.
But then this kind of takes us into our third question with the point that I'm about to bring up. What are some similarities in this current era? And for what
Hmm.
I will say, mental health for men has been
Hmm.
advocated a lot much, more than it has
Mhm.
in previous generations. Whereas for women, like it was always advocated for y'all to like go find those resources. Always go to your best friend. Always go to your mother. Always go to XY. Always go to this person for support for whatever struggles you may have. But for men,
Mhm.
in the past, it has always been more of a thug it out. It is what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Tomorrow's a new day. The world didn't end. Move on.
Mhm.
And in some cases, sure, take that on the chin, move on. But in today's age, depending on how deep or how severe, um, whatever the what's the word I'm looking for? I just completely blanked. Whatever the time issue is, it's
Mhm.
go seek help, go to a therapist, go talk to somebody, just let it off your chest because there it
Mhm.
has been a rise in suicide within the last couple of years. So, in terms of similarities, I was really thinking of a point of like mental health standards.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You do see a lot of more posts about like, well, men need to get the help that they need. You really haven't seen it. I know I haven't seen it in the past, so it was really good. I would guess this another thing I would say is gender roles are kind of like blurring, like you said earlier, like they'll take turns between men and women. It's not like man goes to work and woman's just at home doing whatever. But it's like they're actually working as like a unit. They're actually working like as a forefront for their family. So I think that's one of the good similarities between the two is that like it's allowed for men and women to do the same thing in the household.
100%. You want to tackle the next question?
Yeah, I'll ask you that one. You'll ask you, yeah, you can answer that one first. Um, does your faith within your religion shape the way you see the world?
100%.
Mhm.
I think we even covered it in class that same exact question. I think it was even phrased that way too, but I wasn't thinking about the previous class that we had as I wrote this question up. But I will
Mhm.
say 100%. The way that I see the world as a Christ follower does shape largely how I move, how I act, and my temperament towards the world as well.
Mhm.
Um, Not wanting to, well, yes, one wanting to do the best I can do, but having that mindset of I live on this world not necessarily for myself, but for Him above, for His greater purpose, and not necessarily being self-absorbed. And so I would say end all be all. That is like my faith is definitely how I view the world.
Mhm. I would say the same thing. I mean, I have an Outbreak of the Gospel shirt on right now. My faith is my everything. Without it, I mean, I've lived both sides of lost in the world, halfway Christian until now, being like a full believer, full Christian, walking in that. And I would say that that changed the trajectory of my whole life. So I only walk through life with God at the forefront of my mind. So I live, breathe, do everything with God. So it does shape the way I see the world. It seems more brighter, even in the midst of all the chaos going around.
Okay, so then with that said, whenever someone tells you like, no, like this isn't true, or no, this isn't real, how do you personally respond to that?
Me personally, I would like bring up like miracles in their lives. I would like ask them like if you were somewhere dangerous and you mysteriously just survived, don't you think that that's God's hand over your life? Or just like little instances like that where people don't realize that something was watching out for them to stay alive. And then they'll be like, oh, well, I can see what you're saying. Like something was preventing me from getting hurt, or something was preventing me from taking that L, or something like that. So that's how I respond. How about you?
First, I would say, well, we're all entitled to our own opinions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I go in depth into where that comes from their point of view, because
Mhm.
obviously that's more a personal thing. So
Yeah.
then opening up that that court for discussion is where I would target
Mhm.
that conversation.
Mhm.
All right. So for the next question, within your own culture, how much impact do you think your faith, how much do you think your faith impacts your people?
Um, I would say as our culture, I think it impacts our people a lot. Even if it's like in the smallest, minute way, we're all faith-based at from somewhere. Whether it's like they track it all the way back to slaves and singing hymns. We've always had like a source of God and Christ in our lives. So going to church, doing stuff like that, I think is what shapes Black culture. I think that's what helps keep Black people together is our faith.
100%. And to go even a step further in terms of music, I think even like jazz and blues was somewhat
Mhm.
influenced by the faith as well, because you can kind of hear a lot of the undertones as well as the rhythm and melody and flows in those two styles really kind of show gospel
Yeah.
a little
Mhm.
bit. So I would say that it has influenced like previous generations a lot in terms of musical taste, as well as even today.
Mhm.
Like when we look at our own culture, it's kind of like, whoa, like, where are we? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But then even still, there's still like a lot of influence. Like
Mhm.
it could be an artist that is secular, right? Or doesn't necessarily follow Christianity, but then next thing you know, they drop like a 12 verse line,
Mhm.
like just talking about Christianity out of nowhere. And it's like that was kind of random. But then they're talking about like the
Yeah.
church and things like that and how the church influenced their lives, you know, for better or for worse, but
Yeah.
also the same, like they're still bringing up the faith.
Mhm. Yeah, I would agree. You do see a lot of artists who start off secular, then they're like, oh, I can work in gospel. Like, I want to spread the gospel that way. So I think that's pretty cool to see them make that shift in their own lives at whatever time they make it. So, yeah. Um, the last question is, what are the struggles you face within following your faith in this current era that you don't think were a problem in the previous eras?
Hmm. If you want me to be honest, as I said again, these questions were intended for somebody else, and I did not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily expect to answer them.
Mm-hmm.
However, similar to in the Songs of Solomon, um, nothing under the world is new. Nothing under
Yeah,
the sun that hasn't been done already is new. You know,
right.
dating back 15, 1200, 30, like 3,300 years ago, right? And I still necessarily believe that. There is no really new temptation. There is no really new struggle. Like, sure,
Right.
if anything, it's just more a lot more refined and revamped. However, a lot of the same things that there were then, except for the older technology, is
Mm-hmm.
still the same today. But I do think it is a lot more prominent. For example, when it comes to like this is also pretty degenerate, but for, for lack of for lack of a better term, gooning and
Mm-hmm.
just that whole space of sexual degeneracy that
Mm-hmm.
has been a lot more accessible, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
porn and all that whole space, you know, it's not just like you have to go to a brothel, you have to go to the strip club
Yeah.
to go to gain access of those things, of that material, or you have to go to like a specific sex store to like gain access to
Mm-hmm.
that material. Like everyone pretty much has access like to this, right? Which
Yeah.
gains you free access to where you don't even have to buy it. Like how
Mm-hmm.
it has been over like what the last 30 years just because of how advanced technology is. Or
Mm-hmm.
even like your computer screen, or for some people, they can even use gaming or whatever they have at their disposal as easy access. So I would say
Yeah.
not necessarily for myself, but like up in the world, you
Mm-hmm.
know, sexual degeneracy has. been a lot more prominent. Now, it has always been a
Mhm.
thing, but it is a lot more of an issue.
Um, yeah, I would agree, and I would just say like how you said access. I'd say access to everything, on the internet is a big struggle. I don't face it myself. I would say, especially on the campus or in the school that we go to, it's not much of a struggle to show your faith here. But I would say, like in the world, it's so easy for you to post a video about God or something, sharing your faith, and you see like comments like, oh, that's not real, or oh, you're just talking, or oh, here go Christians again. So it's like people have so much access to like tear you down or like tear you away from your faith. So I would say that's like the biggest struggle for the world, I would say.
I second that. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
That is like a worldly struggle because so we are as close as we have ever been, but yet as distant at the same time,
Mhm.
as people say. So I do second that as well.
Mhm.
Um, well, Haven, that was my last question that I had for you. Anything that you would like to bring to the floor?
Um, I would ask this, what is your, as a black man, even though you said you were chilling, what is something that you find hard as like doing as a black man?
Hmm, that's a good question.
Mhm.
Mm, being able to break stereotypes that others have, of our culture is pretty difficult because people only really see the negative side of what they see through social media. So
Mhm.
then when people see, or other cultures, other races see, you know, young established black men or women like yourself and they'd be like, "What? I thought y'all all were this and that."
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, that's like me looking at their culture, their race, and saying, and I thought y'all were all this, but like
Mhm.
obviously you're not. You know what I mean? So being able to break that first glance look of just what people see through like that one-sided mirror is pretty tough depending on who you're talking to.
That makes sense. Yeah. I just experienced that Tuesday. I was at the luncheon here, and this lady, old and white, she came up and she was like, "Well, what's your major?" And I said, "Chemistry." She literally fell back in her body. She was like, "Oh, wow, I would have never guessed that. I'm gonna just have to leave you right where you're at." And I was just like, "What?" But I mean, that's a response I get constantly when they look at me. They don't assume that I would be a chemistry major or a science major. So it's like I'm used to it. But that one was like funny because she literally like
I
jumped
mean,
back.
to be honest, looking at your track record in terms of what you've been involved here on campus, if I personally didn't know you, I would have assumed that you were a business major. Or
I get that a lot. I get business or psychology.
I wouldn't guess psychology, but I would business would definitely be my first guess.
Mm, yeah.
Well, Haven and Professor, thank y'all so much for attending my TED Talk. Um, this is Jonas and Haven signing out. We will see you on YouTube. That sounds so corny.
Bye.
And never say nothing like that again. That is insane. All right. Have a good night, Haven.
You too. Bye, Jonas.